Hi guys, and welcome back to Martin's Daughter. Today I wanted to talk to you about why some really good parents could be interested in having critical race theory brought to our schools. So we just finished our school year, and in the last little bit I was talking to some teachers, and as we were talking, some of them were like, I really love the work that you're doing, but I'm just not sure that it's going to reach parents in the way that we would hope. I'm just not sure that parents want to be woken up in this, and I think a lot of parents have bought into the goodness of critical race theory because it allows them to be exposed to other people's experiences in life and to have a culturally relevant understanding. And I completely understand why people would want to have an understanding of different cultures. I do. I love to meet people of different cultures, ask them where they're from, try their food, talk to them about their experiences, what brought them to America. All of those things I think are a natural curiosity that we should have. And the idea that that would be silenced under the idea of not committing a microaggression is something that I worry about making us more distant than actually bringing us in and unifying us. To me, having questions and a natural curiosity is something that's good for every single human being. This is how we grow our true social intelligence. But what I think is happening is a lot of people are buying into critical race theory, believing that that's just teaching real history, that that's just teaching people how to be compassionate and culturally responsive to other people. But that's not really what critical race theory is. In fact, it's not at all what critical race theory is. And instead of going again into a video on what that is, I'm just going to include a link to a really fascinating, I'm just going to include a link to a very good, very well thought, and very concise video on what critical race theory is. And I'm also going to include another one on what social and emotional learning is from the same channel. I'll put those both in the comments below. So what your average person tends to think critical race theory is just a study of history, is just a bringing in of cultures. And that's not a correct interpretation of what it is. Critical race theory, you have to understand, comes from there's a huge difference between critical thinking and looking at things through a lens to criticize. And that's what I'm standing against. That's what so many of us are standing against. It is not that we don't want to know real history. You can watch many of my other videos to know that I'm not afraid of real history. It's that I don't want people, really anyone, but especially children, to look at things through a lens of oppressed and oppressor, because I think that that feeds into a mental health deficit. The problem with embracing things without understanding what they really are is that what we don't know can hurt us. I'm reminded, and I've said it before, of the book Animal Farm. And I'm reminded especially of the geese who were so eager to, I believe it was the geese, maybe the ducks. Anyways, they were so eager to say, oh yeah, I did this. Oh yeah, I'm part of this. I did this. I did this. And they're so eager to actually get themselves killed. And I'm not saying that we're going to get ourselves killed. What I'm saying is that we are eager to rush in our own demise, because that is what critical theory tends to do. Then they're going to turn their eyes on the next group that's problematic. And that might be the people who feel like they shouldn't have to work, who feel like they should have months off for mental health reasons, who are not productive, who are not bringing the most into society in their new utopia. So what I want to do today is, what you're not supposed to. I want to encourage you to ask some questions. One, were we so far behind? Were we in such a place with racism that other cultures weren't being represented? When we finished our post-service, one of the things that we had to do was take our old books, because we use very old books at our school, and repair them. We needed to tape pages. We needed to mark anything that was torn out. We needed to white out. We're trying to preserve these books because they already had a strong, culturally diverse curriculum to them. And if we take on new books, we are going to we're going to get the CRT. We're going to get those things that push an agenda. We're going to get the children with their fists up in the air. We're going to get the misrepresentation of so many people put into our books to support a political agenda. And so to avoid that, we preserve books that were published in the 90s. But what I loved about them was that they really called into question the necessity for new inclusive curriculum. We already had cultural representation that showed the very best of humanity, and also that showed all sorts of people in all sorts of roles, instead of boxing them into these roles that all African Americans must be angry, that all African Americans must be warriors, that all African Americans, that all people of color must be immigrants, and all white people are boys with red hats. That is literally what we saw in some of our more current curriculum. So what I'm hoping to do today is to encourage you to ask questions. And I know that can be hard. I know that we're totally being told that asking questions is quote unquote whiteness. But I think we know the truth. I don't think that you would be on this channel unless you're here to heckle me. I don't think that you would be on this channel if you didn't already have a base sense of what is absolutely true. Well, the first thing that I want you to do is just listen for truth. When you hear things that cannot be supported except by another person with the same agenda, that can't be supported by doing research, that can't be supported with data, then I encourage you to ask, why is this narrative being told? When you see things that are very clearly political on either side, and then they say that they're not political, you have to be okay with realizing that they are lying to you. And then you have to ask, why are they lying to you? I think that there's two reasons. One is the grift. I'm constantly shocked that there's so many people who do not see it, who can't look and say, wow, all of these people who say that they want equal outcomes and that they're here for the new civil rights movement and equity, equity, equity are becoming millionaires. How do we not see that that is not an equitable solution, especially as we're heading into a recession, especially as gas is to the point where you have to think, can I even afford to go to work? And yet these people are buying 6 homes, or these people are charging thousands of dollars to speak or to evaluate a school. The other reason why I think that people would follow this is for self-preservation. I think that we have a lot of people that are quote unquote allies, even though behind closed doors, they know what they're doing is wrong, because they hope that as long as they say the right things, as long as they don't make a ruckus, as long as they appear to support some of these ideas, that angel of vengeance is going to go right over their homes, is going to leave them alone, and that they're going to be safe. And sadly, they're not going to be safe. You're being used, or not you, hopefully not those of you on my channel who are genuinely here because you want to learn. You are not the ones being used, but they're trying to line you up and to teach you to comply, at first out of kindness and eventually out of whatever means necessary. But what you have to understand is that these are the same people who define us as a useless class, who say that our children will be soothed by drugs and video games. And what happens when they've gotten rid of all of the dissenters? What happens if they are successful in getting rid of anyone who would fight back? Well, then they're going to look for the next class of useless people. And that hierarchy is going to make it so that nobody is ever completely safe. We know that in other places where complete allegiance to the government has been required, in other places where socialism and whatever comes after it has been tried, there are people who really, really suffer They get rid of the middle class system, and we only have the very, very poor and the very, very elite. And those aren't good outcomes. So don't fall into this trap that as long as you hush your mouth that you're going to be safe, because somebody somewhere is going to decide that you're the next useless class. The next thing that you can do, and that I really encourage you to do, is to propose solutions. So when I go to school boards or when I speak, I always come from the viewpoint of, I'm here to help. What can I do? How can I bring a solution? And if you stick with the solutions, it's really, really hard to argue with you. So, for instance, my solutions to SELs that are quote unquote culturally responsive is to look at these pictures and to see that they're painting these people and throwing them into boxes, and instead to show them, well, here's our books from the 90s. Why did we need to go down this route of showing every Black person as an activist when go down this route? What is the point? How is this going to lift people? All I see is that this curricula is going to bring more divisive, more anger, more sense of oppression to our children. So what are the solutions here? Another thing that I bring out is, all right, you want to read books about oppression. Specifically, you want to read books about African Americans and what they have been through over the years. But you don't want to share the success stories. We're not reading or watching the documentary on Judge Clarence Thomas. We are instead reading books about slavery 4 or 5 times throughout the year. Those are the only books that some of our schools selected this year. And instead, why not find the culturally responsive books that really do resonate with people who are here in America? Why did people come from Mexico over here and get their citizenship? Why do people come from Arabia and get their citizenship? Why do people come from Asia and get their citizenship? Why do people come from Africa? Not just the slaves. And if you want to tell the story about slaves, then tell the story of Elijah of Buxton. Tell the story of its sequel, The Madman of Piney Woods. Tell the stories of people who have overcome, people who valued their education, people who rose above their dismal circumstances. Tell those stories instead of only the stories that make you look at through a lens of constant oppression. This is the way to heal people if that's really the goal. If it's not really the goal, then you have to be willing to call them out. And I think that sadly in the place that we're in right now, it's not really the goal. The goal is to project and to say everything, the whole accuse people of doing what you are doing while you are doing it to cause confusion. That seems to be the goal with our administrations, because the curriculum that they're bringing is racist. The curriculum that they are bringing will take a child who feels like they're just a normal kid who can do anything that anybody else in their class can do, and will show them that first example of, oh no, you're oppressed. You need to be out there marching. You need to be out there demanding your equity. When the reality is that equity, equal outcomes with no thought to meritocracy, is a bad deal all around for every normal person who wants to achieve more. And lastly, I just want to encourage you to know yourself. Know who you are. If you have weaknesses, which we all do, but if you have weaknesses, then work on them. But don't work on them in a group with people who have bought into an ideology that seems a little shady. Work on them for yourself. I know that recently I have worked with people who, I've been in circumstances with people who mistrust African Americans. I know that I've worked with people who feel uncomfortable around people like me and who project a stereotype on me without getting to know me. And it was not easy to work with these people. It's not easy to feel like you're the odd one out, or you're the person in the room who makes other people uncomfortable, especially when I want to be anything other than that, especially when I want to bring people in and I want to share light. But that is a reality, and that is a reality that's being hoisted upon us. That is the reality that people who've never given thought to race are being forced to think about race. And in that forcing, they're being forced to listen to people who hate them. And those people who hate are being glorified. And it is a very exhausting experience to see these people undoing the work, to see these people with their hatred undoing the stitches. So I guess it's like this, right? Undoing the stitches of what so many people worked so hard for. You know, I understand that there are people who have resentment. I understand that there are people who have been through pretty horrific things. I understand what it is to work with people who do not like you and you don't know why. Um, or you do know why and you don't want to say you don't like me because you don't feel comfortable around me. And I greatly resent the motive behind this division, this need to keep people in their places when the only thing that should keep us in our places are our own choices. And I know that for me, even being in these circumstances that have felt uncomfortable, that have not been welcoming, knowing who I am and knowing what my mission is has kept me on a straight path, has kept me focused, but has kept me knowing that we are on the right side of history. We are on the side of good because we are trying to preserve we are trying to preserve Martin Luther King's dream. We are trying to preserve the idea that all of us should be judged by the content of our character. We're trying to stand up for character in a world that would reduce us to nothing but color. So whether or not it's your faith or whether or not it's the knowledge that you've acquired through reading, through doing research, through actually getting to know your neighbors, whatever it is that gives you a foundation that lets you remember that every single person has worth, even the people who hate us, even the people who throw the shade, even the people who will get in my comments and say I'm factually incorrect about this or that, knowing that they have worth, not because of the box that they fit into, but just because that they're human beings and just because they deserve to be treated with respect and kindness, and they deserve to be listened to for that same reason. That can keep you grounded. But I want to encourage you not to buy in to the emotions game. Don't buy into, oh, I mean, I was camping with people recently and they had said, well, does this make me racist if I think this or I think that? And don't even buy into it. You know, to me, a racist is somebody who has the power to make my life miserable. And somebody who feels uncomfortable with me, you know, that might hurt my feelings, but it doesn't affect my life. It doesn't affect whether or not I have a job. It doesn't affect whether or not I have a home where I can go on vacations. It doesn't affect me in that way. They don't have control over my life unless I give it to them. That's the real work, not standing over here and saying, oh, we must do the work, but they're not capable of doing the work. That is when you start getting into racism. That is when you start getting into a mindset of supremacy, whether that's Black supremacy or whether that's white supremacy. When we start saying us and them, that is when we get into the scary places that might be uncomfortable now, but will turn into hate in the future if we let it. So just don't let it. Try to look for the good. Try to look for that motive and why somebody might do what they're doing. And if you can, and if you can look through that motive, and if you can give them grace, then you have a chance of them listening to you. You have a chance of getting through to them. And we have to get through to them because there is a war on our children. There is a war on our families. And there's a war for our souls going on right now. And I have peace in knowing that ultimately this little bit of work this little bit of turning on my Zoom and talking to a green light is doing the real work, is bringing out, I hope, um, a little bit of hope for other people, is bringing out a little bit of encouragement, and is growing our little team of rebels. All right, friends, I just want you to understand that I do appreciate you. I do appreciate the effort of all of these parents who are just trying to understand, just trying to listen, just trying to expose their kids to different things, but expose them to the real different things, not the projected monolith, not the projected grifters idea of what different culture is. Just be friends, reach out and get to know your neighbors, get to know, go to a park that is more diverse than your normal park, and let your kids hang out with other children so that the kids can see that they're just children, and so that you can see that they're just parents, that you can see that we're all just trying to do the very best we can for our own families, and that the rest of it, that is agenda driven nonsense and not going to benefit any of us. All right, friends, I'm going to wrap up with that. I'm really excited for more content for the channel. So if you haven't, please like, subscribe, and share. I just want to get the word out there. I want people to realize that there are people who look like me who don't think the way that the media would tell you that we all think. And I want to do what I can to build unity and to bring hope and to inspire you to hold on tight, to build that foundation, and to be unshakable. All right, guys, bye.